Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to Explore TalkX. Today, we're having with us Brian Brackeen. I'm your moderator, Ana Maria Manda. I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland, and I'm an entrepreneur, but also a coach and a mentor for startups. Today, I'm gonna facilitate a conversation with Brian, and we're gonna discover more about Explorer and about how you can grow your ideas and turn your programs, your new, exciting, creative business possibilities into something concrete. About Explorer, for those of you who have not participated yet or don't know about Explorer, this is 12 weeks program designed to let young people experience entrepreneurship as a career option. Along the whole period, you will work on your ideas, on your projects, and transform them into sustainable business that contribute to achieve the agenda of SDG 2030. With a practical approach based on the dynamics of social learning, Explorer is designed to convert you as participants into real active agents of change through the implementation of economically sustainable projects in different industries and sectors, in all types of different organizations. Explore it's fully online programs, so it's very easy to get into, to apply. You can actually, it's a great period right now to apply because they have an open call in 10 different countries. So my colleagues will put in the chat.
Recording in progress.
Go and check the different details, reach out to them if you have more questions, but you're definitely in the right time if you have an idea and you want to get support. The candidates can participate as individuals. So if you have just one idea, you don't have a team with you, that's perfectly fine. But if you are with a group, with a team already, that also works. The program is suitable for both versions, and we can only encourage you to try out. About Brian, our speaker for today, we're very excited to have him with us today. He's the general partner at Lightship Capital, the Cincinnati-based VC firm dedicated to backing underrepresented entrepreneurs in the Midwest. In his role, he oversees funds operations, leads the AI development team, but also serves on the investment committee. Before Lightship, Brian founded the Miami-based face recognition innovator Curious. So his leadership saw the company selected by Wall Street Journal as one of the 25th top 25 startups in the country and positioned the company alongside giants like Microsoft. Very inspiring, a great success journey. Kairos has processed nearly 1 billion faces and has raised more than $50 million from investors. Under Brian's leadership, Kairos took a strong stand against the government's use of facial recognition and worked hard to actually eliminate racial bias in its data sets. That's amazing, and we're very lucky to have him with us tonight to learn more about his experience as an entrepreneur, but also how did it get from actually being the senior project manager at Apple or senior managing consultant at IBM to actually becoming a founder of a very successful company. In addition to his work at Lightship, Brian lectures extensively across the globe on entrepreneurship, on code, digital economy, AI, machine learning, and so much more. And he also participates actively as a mentor in programs for organizations like Girls Who Code, Black Girls Code, and the School District of Miami. Welcome, Brian. Very excited to have you.
Very good. Very embarrassing bio. I appreciate that. We're going to share also some of the downsides. It was a really good ride up, but it isn't straight up, right? There's a lot of tough, ups and downs, and we'll talk about those today as well.
I'm looking forward because indeed we all know that being an entrepreneur is definitely not easy. It looks very glamorous at the end when you had a great success, but there's a lot of failures before getting there. So Brian, tell us more about you. Who's Brian, the person? How did you actually get to be an entrepreneur? Did you ever thought of actually being one, or how everything happened for you?
Who's this Brian guy that we're here for? Yeah. So I'll go a little bit back and tell the kind of the story. And I'll do it briefly. We were talking earlier that the questions are really the most important piece. So we want to save a lot of time for those questions. But yeah, I was born in Columbus, Ohio. My parents, one parent was a Nigerian transfer student, and then one was African American from Ohio. There was a Case Western University. It wasn't the right time for them, so they put me up for adoption. I had Amish foster parents, and for those that don't know what that means, in the U.S., it's a group that does not use any technology. So, no electricity, cloth diaper. They build their own homes. I was living in a house with essentially no technology at all for the first year of my life. As you mentioned, fast forward, I became like an AI person. So I've lived the whole gamut of technology through my life experience. But ultimately adopted by two amazing parents in Philadelphia. My mother's a psychiatrist. My father's an engineer. So I learned the kind of personal skills, and I can look you in the eye, Anna Maria, and say hello, like because my mom taught me that, and my father taught me the rigor, the engineering, kind of the staying home and coding all night kind of skill set. And so I learned to code when I was 8 years old. Worked at
Wow,
mostly big companies. Yeah, early.
impressive.
So I worked at mostly
Most,
big places.
yeah, most people actually, they just read at that age. So definitely an early stage entrepreneur, right?
I was bribed, actually. So my dad brought home these discs back in those days, and he said, "Hey, there's a game on here. Here's the instructions. You got to put in some codes to make the game work. You figure it out, right?" And so I had to learn how to do really basic, DOS commands and things just to get the game to work. And so I just fell in love with this idea as an 8-year-old that I could type something and I could manipulate this other world in a way that I couldn't control my world as an 8-year-old, right? And I just fell in love with it.
That's amazing. What a inspiring story. Thank you, Dad, Brian's dad.
Thanks,
Because
Dad.
we'll definitely have a lot of learnings to take from you, Brian. And I'm sure coming from, in a way, tough background, but still, I'm sure that formed you and gave you the ABC for life. Definitely very important. So appreciate your sharing. It's very inspirational.
Anytime. So I'll forward to this part of the talk, which is what these entrepreneurs are starting to go through. I just start to think about starting a new business, right? The ups and downs. After working all those big companies that we talked about, the IBMs, the Apples, I just remember sitting in my cubicle and thinking, I can't do it anymore. I loved Apple. I still love Apple, but I couldn't be an employee anymore. I had my own dreams, my own fears, my own desires. I wanted to change the world in my kind of with my ideas, just like Steve did. And so quit my job at Apple, took the big leap, and started Kairos, a facial recognition company. At first, it was all about doing facial recognition for payroll, right? So understanding who someone was and clocking them in and clocking them out and verifying their identity with their face. And that was a good business. It wasn't super successful. And then along the way, we had a client say, "Hey, like, I love what you guys are doing. I don't really need the payroll side of it. Can I just buy your facial recognition for other things that I'm doing?" Right. And we realized that was like, oh my God, like that's the big idea. Like, forget this payroll stuff. Like, let's be a facial recognition company, right? And by listening to our customers and understanding their needs and being humble about the original idea versus kind of where we should go. And so it was along that path. We'd raised some money, but the investor said, "Listen, I love it, do it, but I'm not giving you any more money." Right. And so we ran out of money along the way. And I remember very well kind of, coming to the team and saying, "Hey, you're going to get paid this Friday, but you're not going to get paid next Friday. And I don't know when you're going to get paid again. And I failed you as a leader because my job is to go out and raise the money we need to be successful. And I haven't done that. And my apology isn't going to pay your bills, isn't going to make your husband or wife or partner happy with the situation. And you have to leave. I understand. But if you stay, I know we're on to something big. Like, I know we're going to change the world. If you stay, you give me a little more time, I will raise the money necessary. So I went home, kind of cried all weekend, came back that Monday, and not a single person had left. We were like 13
That's
people.
amazing. How do you, as a leader, how do you get the trust of a team, especially in such difficult moments?
I think radical transparency, right? You're a family at that stage. You really are. You're really spending more time with them than you are with your partner, right? So I think, yeah, treating people with respect, letting them know the situation, good or bad, and ultimately, of the best founders, people believe in them. Maybe they're not doing anything. Maybe just kind of people gravitate a little bit, to certain founders, and you have to use some of that to your advantage in these tough situations.
Definitely not easy. And I can imagine, especially when you have everything at stake, and also you don't want to disappoint those people, right? Like they gave you your trust, their trust. It's definitely a lot of pressure. So how do you actually, as a founder, and after having the comfort, being in big companies, having a good paycheck at the end of the month, having a steady career and great development, how does it feel, and how did you handle the pressure, the stress of not being sure you're actually going to get something at the end of the month, having responsibility for other people's lives and families as well? How was that transition, and how did you handle it?
I think you have to realize, and I didn't realize until that meeting we spoke about, that really everything is about the people you work with, serving them, right? And the more you serve them, the more successful you will be and the company will be. And I think about that even when it comes to shareholders. I'm always thinking about the shareholder, but I can serve them best by serving the customers and the team. Like they'll come along for that successful ride. And if we have a great team and we're serving the customer, it works out for everyone else kind of involved. And so I think putting them kind of front and center of mind is part of how you get through the tough times, certainly. The other thing is, and I spoke a little bit about this, is humility is critical, because you may have had an original spark of an idea, but you don't have to guess. You can just talk to the customer and guide the company through really active listening and understanding the customer's why, like why they need the product, what they're using it for, what they're replacing, what is the value to them in their business, really understanding them. That helps greatly. And it's not always only about product. Sometimes it's about the person. So let's say you sell into enterprise companies like big SAP. We're selling to SAP in Germany, right? You need to understand, is the person German or American, right? That alone, like the way that they're going to engage with you and the way they're going to look at the deal based on their background is going to play a huge role, right? The German skepticism versus that American, sure, whatever, right?
Totally agree.
And then and that it goes to other things like how they're going to do contracts and how they're going to look at value. And they're people who decide to work at a big company, so they may not want to take a risk on a new idea. How do you mitigate the risk in their minds so they can take a chance on you? So you really have to understand the human behind the decision, even when you're selling to businesses.
And that's indeed something that many companies tend to forget. And we see that the big difference, those that are actually successful do put customer at the center. And by customer, it means internal customer, so the employees, but also the end user. That's very, very interesting, Brian. By the way, the people, the audience, please feel free to put questions in the chat. We're going to pick those up as well to discuss with Brian. So whatever you're interested to know from him, from his career, from the amazing experience he has, let us know. And I'm happy to take your questions to Brian. Meanwhile, Brian, please tell me, because you said, well, initially we're focused on payroll, but then somebody came with this idea. How difficult was it to actually pivot? Because I imagine it was your first baby, right? Your first time founder. How was it to actually change the plan and to, as we always say, don't be in love with a product, but with the needs, with the problem, the needs of your customers? How difficult was it for you, and how did the transition happen?
you always love your kind of, the first child, right? And so I still think that product, the payroll product, would have been amazing. But yeah, I think by listening, you realize a couple things, that the value that we were making in the customers' lives was only worth a number of dollars per month. And there weren't enough of those for us to get to where we were trying to get to. It becomes a math problem, right? Ultimately. And so after you realize that, and then there's a pivot that happens. We call these pivots, as you know. And so when you do that pivot, you also oftentimes realize that some of the people on the team were designed for the first thing and really aren't best placed for the next thing, which leads to another set of tough conversations, because we had some people on our team that were payroll experts and some people on our team that were just developers in general and engineers. And so those folks, great, come on with us. Designers, come with us. But for the folks that were purely payroll focused, we had to have those tough conversations that it's not you, it's me, right? Like, the company is changing. We're going a different direction. It doesn't fit your very important and very valuable skill set. But in this new future, it doesn't make sense. You see that sometimes too when you change tech stacks. You might be a Java shop early because that's all you could afford, or the folks that would work for free knew Java and PHP. And then later, right, you're like, oh, now I can raise some money. I can afford the fanciest, newest, Rails, Golang, whatever. And so you have to change your technology stack, and some people will retrain, but others will have to get off the ride at that stage. And those are also very tough conversations.
I can imagine it's not easy, especially when they were with you from the beginning. It's hard to make such a call, but yes,
they are like family. They're like family. An investor once told me that if you think about like the space shuttle, it kind of goes up and then the rockets kind of fall off at different elevations. It's kind of like that. As the company, enters orbit, some folks are gonna kind of fall to the side, and it doesn't have to be a negative thing. Because if you are transparent and you share why, and you've led with the kind of dignity and respect, I've even said to people they were excited about the future of the company, even though they're not going to be part of it.
I can only imagine how difficult that is, but I'm sure you had many other difficult moments in your career as an entrepreneur, founder. Can you share with us what was probably the most challenging moment you recall?
Well, you talked in your opening about not selling to government. I think, we had a lot of fights both internally as a team and at the board level about whether or not we should be doing that kind of work. And we could think about it this way. When you're an early company, we raised 13 million, which is a good amount. And we were super thankful, but it's not enough to like go all the way. It's like a good amount. It's not like a great amount. It's not 100 million. It's not whatever. It's not WeWork's billions of dollars, right? And so what happens is the rest of the money that you need to get to where you want to go has to come from revenue. That revenue could be private companies. Like we had Disney, Walmart, Royal Caribbean, big brands like that. But money also could come from the government. In our case, the US, or state governments. And our concern was that governments have essentially like the lock and the key in the world of facial recognition. So if I'm Tesco, I'll use a European brand to try to, be fair. If I'm Tesco and I want to use facial recognition for paying for groceries, great, no problem. Someone has to enroll because Tesco doesn't have everyone's face, right? So I've got to enroll my credit card for that process to work. And so it requires my consent for that to happen. If I'm the government, all right, you pick a country, they have all of our driver's licenses, passports, they already have the picture and the name together already. So all they need to know is like put a camera somewhere and they know who every single person is on the street. And we didn't feel like our technology that we worked on day and night, every single morning, night, think about in the shower, we didn't want all that effort to be focused on whatever those needs might have been. Some of them could be good, like protecting us from child predators, but some of them could be bad, right? And we didn't want our technology used for those reasons.
And was it a moment where you had quite of, arguments within the team because of such a topic? Because I can imagine some people want to go for the money, others are stronger on the values and the principles. How do you handle such situations, and how was it for you?
Yeah, I would say some people, all good people, but some people would take a libertarian view, if you think about it from a US-centric way, or a West Coast view of, hey, we're just providing a tool. How people use it is not our business. Like, we make hammers. You could use it for that, or you could use it to hurt someone, but that's not what our intention was, and that's not, why we built it. I'm sympathetic to that. I am sympathetic. In general, I think that companies shouldn't be picking the kind of the winners and losers in general. And then there's another group that said, hey, I don't like it either, but we could use the money. We've got to grow. Even if I don't like it, like there's a financial reason to do it. It's a different consideration. Also fair, also good people, but and then I think there's a third group, which is I would say bad people, which are like greed, right? Like, hey, let's just collect, let's do anything for any price whatsoever. That was like more like the board group. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think that doing the right thing is always the right thing. And you'll never be, even if you're wrong, you'll sleep at night.
I can definitely understand you're very much value focused in the organizations you're building and the teams you're putting together. How difficult is it to actually stick to those values over time when you're having this pressure moments, all the kind of money struggle, but you still continue to believe what you're doing is really a good mission that people can benefit and can change the world of tomorrow? What does it take from you as a leader to manage to stick to those values no matter what?
There are some things that we have to negotiate and meet people halfway across our professional and entrepreneurial lives, right? I mean, collaboration is critically important to our personal success. That said, you shouldn't be collaborating or negotiating your core values, right? And there are things, Anna Maria, that you believe that you would never want any company that you created to go against those things, independent of success, right? And I think when we look at companies like Facebook, they have made a decision to really stir us up algorithmically, just to have more eyeballs on ads, right? And we see the impact that some of those decisions have had on societies across the world. Yeah, I am not willing to make that trade-off. I think that you can have that. I think that even Facebook would be a very successful company without all of us yelling at each other all the time. I don't think it's necessary. And so, yeah, those core values are critical, that everyone that joins the firm, even after the founder goes on, lives by those values.
I'm really happy to hear this, because you are the living proof that it is possible to actually stick to your values, do business, and actually scale and be a successful company. And
it is possible. I will say that we sold the company because of some of these fights, ultimately. And Kairos got bought by a private equity firm in the Turks and Caicos, and that firm still does not do government facial recognition. So it continues to live in the core values that we discussed. But that's really the only protection that a firm has. Very rarely, you don't memorialize these things into documents, or they're not memorialized in any other way. It's really the core values have to be kind of put on the wall and lived by. It's much like, and again, I try not to make these US-centric talks, but it's much like many of our constitutions around the world, right? Like, nothing's making us stick to those rules.
Yeah.
but our own shared beliefs in those rules.
Yeah.
And so it's important to have a constitution for your own firm.
You have to walk the talk indeed, even in the good and in the bad moments.
Yeah. You have to live. Sometimes it's inconvenient, right? But still living by is important.
And if we talk about the high successes, how does it feel like knowing that you started from basically nothing with no experience as an entrepreneur, you still made it to such a success, right? I mean, it's impressive to also know what your company, even though, you sold it now, like the success it has even after selling. How does it make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, it feels like it feels like all those things. The beauty of entrepreneurship is that, yes, the lows are low, but the highs are so high because this thing that not just you, but the team that you love so much has created and grown, and other people see the value. And I was listening to the bio, and even those statistics are wrong. Like Kairos is now well beyond 1 billion faces processed, right? I think we were approaching at the time that that was written. And just the idea that 1 billion human beings' faces have passed through something that I and the team created is so, it teaches you that you can change the world. Yeah. And after you learn and believe that, anything is possible.
I'm all with you, and I'm happy you had this experience, and actually you're taking that change maker now to contributing to a VC and supporting people who have these big dreams, know they can change the world, but are coming probably from a bit more difficult background, underrepresented background. How fulfilling is that, and how do you actually contribute from your role in supporting those people?
Yeah, we talked about kind of how bad my investors were, and I wanted to be the investor that I never had, right? And so we invest in what's called Lightship Capital. Also, follow me on Twitter via this, at Brian Brackeen. I talk a lot about this online, but we invest in women, minorities, immigrants, LGBTQ, the people, the disabled, all the groups that don't get their fair share of venture capital. I'll give you a statistic. Of all capital under management, of all dollars at banks, venture capital funds, private equity funds, all managed money, 98.2% of all dollars are managed exclusively by white men. So if you're a woman, even and the rest of us, yeah. So all of our hopes, dreams, desires, opportunities are being selected by many of us, people who don't look like us or have that shared background. Latina, white woman, anyway, anyone, or really anyone else, right? The majority of us. And so, yeah, we invest in those groups to make sure they get the chance that they deserve.
Very beautiful. I'm happy to meet people like you, because indeed also had been an entrepreneur myself, white woman. The narrative is very different. And especially when we talk about investments, we still have progress to make. And it's only with people like you that we can make a change in tomorrow.
Well, think about your own experience. You pitched to the companies you built multiple times to investors, I'm sure, right? What percentage of the time was it just women of any color?
I was often the only woman, and also when we talk about investors, most of them were male investors. So I think that tells a lot already.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes what we hear is that men ask women different questions than they ask men. If I'm in a pitch meeting and I say, hey, yeah, like me and my wife, we're about to have a baby. They're like, oh, great. Congratulations. Right. And then they move on to the next thing.
Well, Brian,
for women.
I have to say, I've had this question actually during an investment pitch. Like, when are you planning to have your baby?
Oh, and a man was never asked that. A man has to offer that up, but a man's never asked about when he's having a baby or what impact that would have in the business,
But we're all here together and we have an active audience that has a lot of questions, and I'm sure they can all learn and actually change this narrative tomorrow to support underrepresented minorities to make their dreams come true, because it is possible. It's just a matter of finding the right network support, finding the right inspirations, and honestly being resilient. That grit part, it's so important when you're an entrepreneur. So let's take a couple of questions also from the audience. We have Andrea asking, how do you surround yourself with people that believe in you and add value to your company, especially at the beginning of the journey?
It's interesting. So thank you for the question, Andrea. Interestingly enough, it's easier in the beginning than in the end. In the beginning, the only people that are going to work with you are people that know you. So you will find yourself surrounded by either your network or only one person away from you, like a referral, that sort of thing. And it's quick and easier in small teams to get to that kind of family feeling. As the company grows and gets, for me, it was above 15 people, you start to just hire people that are very, very good, but that are outside of your immediate network. And then it's harder to keep some of those cultural values and norms together. So you have to really work hard to keep the culture together after you get beyond, for me, 15 people, 20 people.
Indeed, it's challenging and can also be difficult, like in families, when we talk about business, can be challenging, right?
Very much. You could have reasonable but different opinions.
Yes. Here's another great question from Beatrice. How do you prove to an investor that your venture is actually scalable and has a future when you just started?
And I'll answer this as an investor myself. I think that in the first round, you're betting on the founder. You're not betting on the business. In fact, like me in the facial recognition company, time clock was first, facial recognition fully was second. And so people were betting on me in those first checks, and that I would figure it out. Same is true here. We're going to just look at you as a person, see your amazingness. This is why people who invest in diversity are important, right? See how amazing you are, and then we're going to make an investment based on that.
So personality and your skill set as an individual, and I imagine also as a team, are much more important.
Always, always.
Yes. And if we go back to Kairos, we have somebody in the audience asking, which are the ethical considerations you consider important to take into account when implementing face recognition solutions or other AI applications? That goes back to values, right?
Excellent. What was the person's name?
Avileso.
Avileso. Very impressive question. I could do I literally do an hour-long talk on that topic, but I will kind of summarize by saying this. The lock and key principle, does the person who owns the data have the permission of the people that they're going to use it on, is a critical consideration. Opting in some countries is critical. The regulations in the EU are much more user and privacy centric. The regulations in literally the rest of the world, outside of maybe Canada and 2 states in the US, are much more company centric. So thinking about what geographies you're in and what the norms are in those places, I think an EU resident would expect privacy in a way that a US resident would expect to give their data to get something back. Very, very different cultural norms there. And I think lastly, impacting law was a way that we thought about it too, helping legislators, in our case, congressmen, and possibly in your case, Parliament, to understand the impacts of the good and the bad, and helping them. We actually helped them write laws that were better to get more good outcomes and less bad outcomes.
I can imagine that's actually quite challenging.
Yes.
Working with laws and changing a law, definitely, great success is to manage to contribute to that and make it healthier for the whole ecosystem.
Yes, absolutely. All of us.
And if we talk about, the right way of doing things, is there any book that you would recommend really as an entrepreneur's Bible, or something that our audience can get inspiration from in their beginning?
I think a couple of different books, but to the question you asked, The Hard Thing About Hard Things was written by Ben Horowitz. It's about these tough conversations in leadership. I think it's an excellent book. As far as the early stage, I'm a big fan of a couple of YouTube videos, which isn't reading, but Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Jobs to Be Done by Clay Christensen is a great video about a framework of how to kind of solve problems. I think it's an excellent book. And Clay may have written a video, and I think Clay may have written a book along the way as well. Clay used to teach marketing at Harvard University, passed away a few years ago. And then Lean Startup by Eric Ries is another great early start book as well.
I can subscribe to that as well. Very good one. And because we talk about development and learning, what about yourself, Brian? Like, how much time do you actually take to continuously stay updated in the market and to grow personally and professionally?
I think the best founders do that as a lifestyle, not as a task or a chore. I think that some of us, and I can see by your smile, Ana Maria, like you are on a journey of continuous growth, and you would be doing it even if you weren't doing entrepreneurship, because that's, I suspect, who you are as a person. I think that's what we look for as investors, people who are on a path of continuous growth for themselves and, of course, for the company.
Lifelong learners, indeed. Amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
And what about, sorry, what about the balance? Because, you know, having this as a lifestyle, definitely you allocate some time to constantly network, to stay updated. You probably wake up earlier to read the news and really do a lot for yourself, but you also need to take care of your family, to probably do sports, you know, enjoy cooking or doing, I don't know, going on holidays still once in a while. How do you manage to balance having such a, you know, challenging role, leading a team, inspiring so many people, taking care of yourself, but still having a good equilibrium between all of them?
You know, work-life balance is a problem in our space. You know, I think entrepreneurs are some of the worst people at work-life balance on the whole planet.
I feel better hearing that.
I would say, yeah. I mean, we love our friends here at Banco Santander. I suspect they take their vacations, and unlike us. So that said, I think you have to prioritize it, though. In the same way that we used to talk about paying yourself first, you've got to make sure you take those vacations, because burnout is real, and the marginal increase the business will kind of do in that 1 or 2 days or week that you are still working isn't worth the crash that you're going to feel when your body tells you that it's had enough, and it's going to sit you down because it's going to, you know, from pneumonia to exhaustion to whatever. You're better off just going to a beach for a few days, enjoying the south of France, like, you know, I'm sure Ana Maria goes to, or somewhere nice like that. The Alps.
Yes, definitely helps. And I think there's a moment where your body, no matter what your brain or your desire tells you, your body will just put you down. So this is when you
out of
learn
our control. Yeah.
You don't have a choice anymore. Totally true. And if we go back to, you know, this work-life balance, the teams, how you build teams, how do you actually, what do you do with your team to keep them together, to keep them thriving and be successful, no matter what hard obstacles they come across?
I think, like the customer question, you have to listen to your employees. You have to understand what their hopes and dreams and desires are. If you can do those, if they can accomplish those things at the firm, you should be working in their plans, their growth plans, to get them to be that person. You should also assume and work toward someone kind of growing out of the firm, right? You shouldn't want someone to, in my mind, and again, maybe this is US centric, to work for you forever. I think the goal is that they grow and that they teach the next set of amazing leaders, and they kind of move on to other things. I know our chief marketing officer, a guy named Craig Lewis, and he did marketing and strategy for our firm. He left, started his own, actually a payroll firm for gig workers, and it's one of the most successful companies in the United States, for the fastest growing, and got a huge staff, a beautiful office, looking at the city. I don't even have a window here, you know. This is so. Yeah, I take pride in Craig's success. I don't wish he still worked for the firm. I'm happy to see what he's doing in our community.
That's exactly what I had in mind when you just said it. I think you must feel so proud and good for his success, for the fact that you enable him in a way or another to actually get there. That's brilliant. And I do believe letting people show as they are and really give them opportunities is what makes you successful as well, right?
And it keeps that burnout from happening, because when you see their success, it fills you with so much joy and gives you energy to keep going. It's all about people.
It is about people. And if we talk about startups, the startups that you invest, the people you invest in, what are actually your criteria? You already mentioned a couple of them, but what would be like key elements to say, yes, this is a startup I'm going to invest in?
Absolutely. So we do a couple of things. We look at the demographics of the folks we talked about, women, minorities, you know, all those groups. And then we also look at geography, or in areas that are underserved. So we don't invest in New York, Boston, or San Francisco. Those three places have plenty of money. They don't need our money. They're fine. So in a geography that we could be helpful in. And then last, we invest in certain industries, but I think that the idea really there is that, are they doing something that can be a market leader in the 5 industries that we invest in? And that's CPG, artificial intelligence, healthcare, sustainability, and e-commerce. If they can like own those areas and they can make $1 billion business in those areas, then that's who we want to talk to.
And still, some of them maybe don't have yet the qualities to present themselves, to pitch themselves properly. How do you manage to identify, or what would you advise the people that are young in their journey to do to showcase a bit more of those skills that make them successful in front of an investor?
If you're still in school, one, take a drama class or a theater class. That is actually very useful. If you're not in school, take a comedy improv class. The humor can actually help some of the kind of tougher negotiation pieces. If you're in certain folks learning how to play golf, investors love golf, that can help. But I think ultimately, being true to yourself and just sharing more of you is all you really need to do. You actually don't need to learn anything new. You just need to learn how to share more and be more you, because that's what I fall in love with, is the people.
Thank you very much, Brian. We're actually close to our time here on Twitch. But before closing the session, I do have a question that I always like to ask the people I'm discussing with. If you would be able to actually go to dinner with somebody alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow. This is hard. Okay. Anyone alive or dead?
Anyone.
I'm gonna really I have so many. I have multiple answers. I'll still stick. I'm gonna give 2 just because you can't stop me.
To be in group.
One is certainly Jobs. I've eaten in the same room as him, but I've never sat with him one-on-one. Obviously he's since passed, but there's so many questions I would have loved to have asked him. And I've really modeled my life around a lot of his many principles. So I think he certainly would be one. I'm also a bit of a history buff. So some of our kind of founding fathers in the United States, I think, were very interesting people. One of which is from a U.S. state, Pennsylvania, a guy named Thaddeus Stevens, who you guys will have to Google to understand. Even no one talks about this guy, but
I don't know him.
yeah, he was a really kind of radical abolitionist in the days, and really helped push America toward ending slavery and moving into its kind of a really golden period, and so called Reconstruction. And so Thaddeus Stevens for the historical buffs, and Steve Jobs for the techies.
Very nice choice. Thank you very much, Brian. And the last, wish or words of wisdom to share with the audience before we call it a day.
You're at the beginning of a journey that is going to change you just as much as the company. But it can only really change you for the better. You'll grow, you'll be more yourself. You'll learn how to share concepts with people and how to get people to help you. And that skill isn't just applicable in business, it's applicable in life. We've all, I think, had successes and failures, but we wouldn't trade those for anything in the world. I suspect myself or Ana Maria would not want to become the person we were before. We are excited about the person that we're becoming. And you can't buy that. It's better than therapy. You just keep going. And because the journey is really worth it.
Love it, indeed. And it is about the journey. So people enjoy it, have fun with it. Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing all these amazing experiences you've been through and all these advices that definitely are a great support in the beginning of becoming an entrepreneur. Guys, everybody, feel free to contact us on LinkedIn. My colleagues will drop the link for Brian and myself. We wish you all the best. And thank you for joining us and looking forward to a future session together.
Thank you. And follow me on Twitter.
And Twitter.